I don't know who your dad is. You were a one night stand. I was drunk. She said, I got the part. I went back the next day. She said, we gave it to someone else. You're too heavy to lift. Not saying anything doesn't work. Trying to tell them what's wrong doesn't work. So I'm going to start restricting my food. So that'll make me different on the outside. Then maybe people will accept me. I started starving myself freshman year of high school completely.
Your doctor put you on morphine for your headaches and
Injectable. And that started the addiction to heroin, which eventually became injectable heroin. I knew I needed to change, but at the same time, that voice saying, you're worthless, you're a burden, look what you've done, the shame, the guilt. I just hated myself. And I wanted to stop being sick and tired and lying.
According to Psychology Today, body image is defined as the mental representation an individual creates of themselves. But it may or may not bear any relation to how one actually appears. So, what do you think of your physical self? Why do you think what you think? Did someone say something to you in the past? Did someone make fun of you, pick on you, bully you? When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see someone who is loved, valued, and important? Or do you see someone who is fat, ugly, or unattractive? Where could this line of thinking lead someone? Could it lead to an unhealthy diet? Could it lead to unhealthy habits? Could my outward appearance lead me to thinking that God doesn't like me? These are issues that many people struggle with, and body image is the topic that I want to discuss with our guest today as she shares her life change story with us. I'm Eric Hutchinson, and this is the If Nothing Changes podcast. So, hey, new friend, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Tyra. I'm a baptized believer in Jesus, and I am recovering from food addiction, food and body image, mental illness, codependency, PTSD.
Well, hey, Tyra, thank you so much for being on my podcast and agreeing to share your story. I just can't wait to get into it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your beginnings? Were you always in Centralia, Illinois, or where were you born and raised?
I was born in Centralia, raised in Centralia, and I haven't been too many other places.
So tell me a little bit about growing up in your home as a kid. Did you have any siblings? Did you have a mom and a dad, or was it a single parent? Tell us a little bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up.
Okay, so I have two older sisters, 5 and 6 years older. My mom and dad were married after I was born, they stayed married 2 more years and then got divorced. So it was basically my sisters and I and my mom. But my mom worked a lot, so my sisters kind of raised me. And my grandma would come in and help and just kind of check in. My mom she took us to church every Sunday, Vacation Bible School, the church camp. She did all of that, but she wasn't home a lot. She worked day shift. And then when she would get off, she would go out, and we're not 100% sure what she would do, but there were a lot of boyfriends. So,
wow. So it sounds like your sisters were kind of your parents.
yeah, basically my middle sister. My oldest sister didn't really care for me very much.
So your mom worked a lot, and it sounds to me like she was out after work on her own. So you were there with your sister. And so what was that like? Was it, so were you close to your sister, or were you scared of your sister, or did you guys have a good relationship? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so I was really close with my middle sister. My oldest sister didn't start getting super mean until I was probably 6, 7, 8-ish area. But my mom did get remarried when I was 4, 3, maybe 3. And I was more scared of him because he abused her. And my sisters were old enough to go to school. So even though he was verbally abusive, he was physically abusive to me also, which I didn't tell anyone that until I was in my 20s, I think.
Did your mom know about the physical abuse or not?
Well, she denied knowing anything about it until maybe 2 years ago. And she said, I saw bruises on you. Um, and I told him he better not ever do that again. That's all that was done. And but we saw her getting abused. And she was also very verbally, emotionally abusive, and very controlling. Um, I never felt safe at home. I didn't. And I grew up feeling really unworthy and very kind of worthless at some point.
Oh, did your stepfather abuse you after he drank, or was substance abuse involved in that, or was he just an angry man?
Well, actually, he was a cop, ironically enough. He had a temper, and my mom and him, I'm sorry, should never have been together. They were toxic, toward each other. And he did drink, yes. So sometimes it had to do with alcohol. My mom denied drinking, even though I remember her taking us to a bar, I'm pretty sure. And we were in the car for like 2 hours waiting. We had no idea what was going on. Um, there were reasons why she would be out until 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And I used to stay up late. That's when my insomnia started, was when my stepdad moved in and she was never home. And so I never had any idea what was going on. My sisters were more aware because they were older, but nobody filled me in. So I used to lay there thinking, she's dead. She's never coming home. And I'd fall asleep cuddling her nightgown, because it smelled like her. Um, and I also felt a loss of control because my mom was emotionally closed off. Boyfriends or husbands were always more important than us, and she would state that. Um, and then my oldest sister started resenting me, and there weren't a lot of people around me that wanted to be there or were safe people, except my grandma, but, we didn't live with her. We did have to go to her house a lot, um, to get away from my ex-stepdad. And we couldn't really tell anyone because my ex-stepdad was a cop. And he would threaten me. So, of course I didn't tell anyone. And my dad, he never came around. He was a deadbeat. So
Well, it doesn't sound like you had a very good home life. It didn't sound like that you felt safe and that you felt loved. How was school, like pre-high school? How was school? Did you, your mom was working all the time, wasn't at home. Did you go to school pretty consistently? And how were you with other kids?
I did go to school. One of my first memories was, I guess, pre-K probably. And I remember going in, and my mom would just always drop us off. There was no really explaining anything. And I went and hid in the playground equipment because I thought I was too ugly to be seen. But I I was very shy, so it was hard to talk to people. But I did have some friends, and I just remember being very sensitive to everything everyone did. Oh, they must not like me because they said this, or they must not want to play with me because I look like this.
It sounds to me like you had a very low self-esteem, and that you didn't think other people liked you. So when did the insomnia start taking place? How old were you then?
I don't remember not having it so that long.
Do you think that that was because of the stress and the things,
Yeah.
you're, worried about what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you had a good relationship with your grandma or your grandmother. Did she introduce you to God? I mean, you mentioned church a little bit, but did you go to church on a regular basis? And what was your belief about God?
So my mom, she took us every Sunday, most Wednesdays, took me to church camp. Um, I had like a little children's Bible story book. Um, and but I loved God. I mean, I just knew he was real. I was baptized at 8. Um, but yeah, I had a Bible, I listened to worship music. I used to sing in church. Um, I loved it. It was like a safe place. Um, it was usually just my mom and I and my sisters that went to church. And then when she got remarried, she would take whatever boyfriend it was.
So what would you
Yeah.
say is the biggest struggle that you had, pre high school, like as you were in the house as a child? What was your biggest struggle?
Just feeling like I didn't fit. I didn't fit in my family. And before high school, another big event was, well, there were two. The first one was I was a dancer, gymnast. I did all that stuff. I loved it. And I got the big part, which I had wanted all those years. And she said, I got the part. I went back the next day. She said, we gave it to someone else. You're too heavy to lift. I was I was probably the second smallest girl in my class. I was very small. My sisters would always make fun of me that I had a huge behind, which, I don't think I need to go into that, but um, they just always picked on me. And so, because of all of the loss of control at home, and because I thought, well, my people pleasing isn't working. I didn't know what it meant then. Obviously, I didn't say my people pleasing, but being nice to everyone doesn't work. Not saying anything doesn't work. Trying to tell them what's wrong doesn't work. So I'm going to start restricting my food. So that'll make me different on the outside. Then maybe people will accept me. And I have something I can control because I didn't feel like I had anything, nothing.
So how old were you whenever the teacher said that to you?
My dance teacher, I think I was 11, and then I started restricting when I was 12. And that was the start of my eating disorder.
So you started cutting back on how much you eat. Did you make yourself throw up, or did you just not eat as much?
It just started out as dieting. First I started skipping lunch. Then I started skipping breakfast and lunch, and then it just kind of kept going.
Wow. Well, you said there were two events. What was the second event that happened that was?
Let's see, before high school. Oh, my mom sat us all down when I was 13 and said, your dad, and she was talking to me at that point. She said, he's trying to fight me for giving you child support again, because he did that on and off my whole life. And he threatened me that he was going to take me to court and fight, you know, fight this and that. And she said, and it's because you're not really his. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, I don't know who your dad is. You were a one night stand. I was drunk. Your sisters have the same dad. You don't have the same dad. And I don't know what his name is. I think it's da 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 da. My sister has spent 20 years looking for this supposed person. We can't find anyone that would match that description. And so my sisters always would say, Tyra, you're adopted, you know. Tyra, you don't look like us, and all these things all my life. So that day it was like they just, that wasn't funny anymore, you know? Um, my oldest sister was like, I knew it, I hate you. And I don't know how she knew it. Um, there's no telling, you know, there's stuff I'll probably never know. And then my middle sister was like, well, what about her? You know, what's going to happen? And how could you do that? Like you were drinking and then aren't you worried about fetal alcohol syndrome and just all these things? And I'm thinking, I just want I just want out of here, you know? And I just sat there in shock after all three of them were gone. I didn't cry, you know. How do you take in news like that? um, but I thought everything I've ever believed is a lie. You know, I don't trust anyone. And now I know I don't fit in this family. And my dad is not my dad. And so that's why he never loved me. That's why he would never pick me up and not show up when he said he would. And um, when the reality was, he did that to my sisters too. But the fact that he was going to tell me because he didn't want to pay child support, he signed the birth certificate. So craziness. So I just went outside and I listened to my worship music, you know, and tried to act like I tried to feel something, but it would take a few years to even come out of denial of that, I guess, or the shock of it.
So you're 13 years old whenever she, you know, and you've already got some food issues and some other things that are going on. And then she drops this bombshell on you. And that has to really hurt and really, you know, impact your identity and what you believe about yourself. So so that's the, you know, that's that you're 13. That's the beginning of your teenage years. What did that do to you going in to a teenager? You're going in and then you start going into high school and you start getting some freedom. Did you try to cope with, you know, substances, or how did you deal with some of that hurt?
I did try to cope by starving myself. I started starving myself freshman year of high school completely. I would eat like, it started out as I would eat like 800 calories. I would exercise every morning before school for 2 hours. Then that increased over time. Um, Sophomore year, we watched something in health class about a bulimic. It's so ironic. And then I learned how to be bulimic from the health video. Um, but yes, I was only eating 300 to 500 calories a day. I exercised before school for 2 hours, after school for an hour to 2 hours, and then at bedtime for an hour to 2 hours. I was throwing up the little bit of calories that I did have. And so I got my wisdom teeth out freshman year in high school. And that's when I was starting to not eat very much. But then the anesthesia from the surgery made me lose like 8 pounds in a few days from puking. So then that further fueled like, okay, well, I can do that. You know, I feel control. And then it just started getting insane. And I got down to 78 pounds at my worst. I was very malnourished. I would pass out all the time. And then junior year, I started running cross country. Uh, yeah, insanity, you know. And I was also taking laxative just by the boxes and Ipecac, which is something you give babies to make them puke. I would puke up blood and just all these different scary things. But at that point, I thought, well, I'm just a burden here anyway, you know. Yeah, my eating disorder went on all through high school.
So let me ask you a question. Did you believe that you were fat? did you think that about yourself? And no matter what you did, when you looked in the mirror, that's what you saw. I mean, what was your logic in your mind for starving yourself?
So in the beginning, yeah, I thought, well, I'll just lose a few pounds because that's why my dance teacher said that. You got to be thin in when you're dancing. And I did have kind of, and it wasn't even a belly, but see, you convince yourself, oh, well, this must be what they're talking about. Or it's because I have a big behind, like my sister said. Um, when they would put me in treatment centers, I would panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to make me fat. They're feeding me the wrong stuff. They're feeding me bread. What are they doing? And so, yeah, I did believe that I was too fat no matter what I did after a while. It didn't matter how much I lost or what other people would say.
Wow. Did you pray to God? Was there a relationship with God during during these years in high school and all of this stuff? I mean, what was your belief about God then?
So I did pray, but after a while, I got so depressed and I just felt like there was no point, like I had no hope. A few times I remember crying out to God on my hands and knees, like, I can't take anymore. It hurts too bad. People leave me, people hurt me. Um, I need help and I don't know how to do this. I have no control. And then I would go back into my insanity. Um, I was going to church still in high school at first, and then I felt so much shame. So there was another separation there.
How did you get into the college scene?
I went to a Christian college in Kentucky. I wanted to get away from my family. I thought that that would fix everything because I knew that staying with my family was the reason I was sick. And since I had gained a little bit of weight and wasn't as depressed, or so I thought, I was excited. I'm going to get away. It's going to be great. And got to college. And I mean, it was a wonderful college. It's small. You go to chapel. Um, it, Everybody there is going to be like a pastor or a youth minister. And I did meet a guy, and because I was looking for that love for my dad, but he was going to be a youth minister. He was so nice. We were together a year. And then we got engaged and got married, which was way too quick because I wasn't anywhere near healing. So I drug my mess into his life. He graduated, we moved to his hometown. His dad gave us a new house. And I was so depressed by then. I was on morphine for my migraines because my doctor tried a few things, but then put me on injectable morphine.
Your doctor put you on morphine for your headaches, and
Injectable.
wow, man,
Yeah,
that sounds almost like malpractice.
I agree. And my mom said nothing. I mean, what did I know? I was still a teenager when that happened. Um, but she even showed me how to do it, and it was nuts.
So when did the
Nuts.
doctor? What age were you? Were you so you said that your mom helped? So this was when you were in high school that he gave you the morphine, or in
I
high
think I
college?
just graduated.
Just graduated high school, and you're having migraines on top of all this other stuff. And he says, "Hey, I'll give you morphine, and you can inject it directly into your veins." Did that cause
Well, it was sub-Q, but it's just as bad because
yeah?
it works within seconds.
So did that give you? I mean, morphine's highly addictive.
Yeah, I didn't know about drugs then. You know what I mean? I had no idea about medications then or drugs.
So you go to college, you meet this guy, you fall in love. Were you still dealing with the bulimia, with the throwing up your food? Did you still feel like you were overweight, and that you still have the food issues going on as well?
Um, I was only throwing up occasionally. I was restricting, but I wasn't starving. So, I mean, somehow that just got slowly better. And I don't know. um, but also, they had me on morphine, so there's no telling what in the world my brain was thinking, right? Um,
So did you ever get weaned off of morphine then, or not?
well, so here's what happened. I ended up going down to a lower dose. Then he put me back on the injectable. And then my husband and I end up getting divorced because I was too emotionally immature. I didn't know how to be married. I got married to fix everything, and because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do, and I wanted him to save me in a way, which is not fair, and I have since made amends. It still hurts me because he is an amazing guy. You know, he he still prays for me. And, so I went home. He puts me back on the extended release of OxyContin. And then he takes me off that cold turkey. Um, because he stops his practice. So I'm left high and dry. So I start buying it from a friend of a friend who, come to find out, is a dealer. And then he ran out one time. And I'm like, well, I don't do heroin because that's all he had to sniff. And I'm like, I don't do that. And I came back the next day and I was like deathly ill. And I'm like, okay, I'll I'll do it, just because I need not to be sick. And that started the addiction to heroin, which eventually became injectable heroin. Um, Ended up moving from my apartment then home after an intervention. And then I just was out of control. And that went on for a year and a half. That was as close to hell as I probably could have been. That and the worst of my eating disorder, like when I didn't even know half of what was going on anymore.
So in the middle of this addiction, I mean, did you? I mean, we always talk about denial. We always talk about reaching a low to where we just said, I've got to get help. I need to change my life. Did that happen to you during this time or not?
I knew I needed to change, but at the same time, that voice saying, you're worthless, um, you're a burden, look what you've done, the shame, the guilt, um, how I felt other people saw me. And I didn't believe anything any of my family said anymore because of the whole dad thing. And my mom's like, get in the car, we're going to NA. I don't care what you say, I don't care what you do. You can throw a fit, you can scream, you can hit me, but we're carrying you out to the car. We don't care what you do. You're not going to do this anymore. So I went in and I never used again after that. Not ever. And that was 17 years ago. Um, because I finally was in a room with people who were not only honest, but they had things in common. Like they didn't have control over their addiction. They had bad things happen to them. They had bad days. And my interventionist then became my counselor. And he was just really honest, blunt, almost like, if you don't like it, then, oh, well, we're doing it because you're not going to lie to me. You're not going to manipulate me. I already know all your tricks. I used to use them too. And I was like, oh, somebody that knows what's going on and understands, that's the best person to help me. And so March 7th, 2007 is when that's my clean date.
That's awesome, Tyra. Hey, I know that you have a lot more of your story to tell, but we are running out of time. And so we are going to save the rest of your story for the next episode. But if you could give one message to the listeners today, what would it be?
That God made us all differently, but he made us all with a purpose. We're created in his image, and you are worthy. You are worthy of love, and you are chosen, and don't ever give up. Even if people hurt you, you can always walk away and ask for help. Just surround yourself with support of people who do actually love you, and just keep going. Pray and just keep going.
Tyra, thanks so much for sharing the first part of your story with us. Hey, if you are listening today and maybe you have a distorted view of your body, perhaps you have taken unhealthy measures to change your appearance. The enemy wants you to believe that you are loved based upon how you look. That's a lie. God loves you just the way you are, and he wants to change your perspective, not your image. However, if nothing changes, nothing changes. See you next time. Next time on the If Nothing Changes podcast.
I stayed clean and sober for a year. I was doing college courses, and then I made another dumb decision. And I looked down on the console, and there are gloves and a rope and duct tape. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Hey, if you are still listening and you like this podcast, I want to encourage you to listen to previous episodes because they will help to inspire change in your life. Also, if you like what you hear, please leave a positive review because it helps to bring this podcast to others. But no matter what, may God bless you and may God bring positive change to your life.